I'm here with Alex Tennent, the author of The Messianic Feast with the subtitle Moving Beyond the Ritual. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Congratulations on the award.
Well, thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here, and
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to have you. First effort, which award specifically did you win?
In the religion, the gold medal.
That's the top of the heap. Congrats.
Thank
Wonderful.
you, thank you.
Give us some insight as to the inspiration behind the Messianic Feast, and where were you coming from when you wrote this?
Well, I never was interested in writing a book before, and I was in Bible college and graduated and entered the grad program, and the professor divided up the class to debate different controversies. And the one controversy that we were debating was whether the Last Supper was the Passover or whether Jesus was sacrificed the next day on the Passover.
Let's get into that specific debate about whether he was there or not, and just that'll help us in terms of a little more insight as to the book's contents.
Okay. And so basically we debated that subject. It's been a long-held controversy since about 200 AD, where basically at the time Rome came in, about 200 AD, and chapter 1 of my book is called The Jewish Disconnect. And basically what happened is they said, no, it's not this anymore, and it's a new thing. And the early Jewish believers all understood that Christ was crucified on the 14th day, which is the day the Passovers are slain.
Okay.
But Rome came in and said, no, it was on Good Friday. And so a lot of things changed at that time. And then that's when they said the Last Supper was the Passover. And the English translations have been translated on down through history to reflect that picture. Whereas all the early Jewish believers believed it the other way.
Okay.
But that was then considered heresy at that time.
Sure.
And a lot of people were, killed basically for that belief. And so then it's come all the way down.
And you found within this debate something compelling enough to kind of parse that out, keep it as a central focus, and create an entire book based around not just the debate, but perhaps what your perception of what the correct both placement and dates were.
Yes.
Interesting. Yes. Okay. So, and amazingly compelling if you think about it, because as you said, it's a long time ago, but it really isn't that long in the grand scheme of evolution. Mm-hmm. People would get killed for believing something different than the other guy, and nobody really had any proof. Do you feel there is, within the contents of the book, some sustainable proof or evidence that your position is accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about that.
Okay, there's one chapter in the book that's titled 50 Reasons the Last Supper Was Not the Passover. Now, one of the super obvious ones from a Jewish perspective is that they ate bread at that meal.
Okay.
And obviously in the Jewish idiom, you do not eat bread at the Passover. You eat matzah, and bread is the thing that's kept as far away as possible. You don't walk around saying, we had bread at Passover.
Right.
What did you have? They always say matzah. And so the Greek word used for every time at the Last Supper of what they're eating was always the Greek regular word for daily bread. Never was it the Greek word for unleavened. And so,
interesting.
So that's just one set of proofs. And the other set of proofs is that all the early Jewish writings believe that Christ was crucified on the 14th day, including the Talmud that says Yeshua was hung on the eve of Passover, which in their idiom at that time, the eve of Passover was as the 14th day was ending as you're going into the 15th day.
Okay.
So.
Wow. Other books out there comparatively in terms of discussing some of the biblical nature, the religious nature, and the controversy therein with regard to dates, times, people, places. What do you feel, Alex, is the difference? What makes this book stand out? What's given this the ability to win an award, and as your first effort, even more kind of a higher level, if you will, of just a nature,
Well, I think one thing that the award criteria was based on was, does it add something new to the body of context that is out there now? And really, there's never been a book or anybody that I've seen that ever brought out that it was bread eaten at the Last Supper. And so that's a first there. But then you take that a step further and you say, what does this, there's a certain ritual kept from the Catholic Church on down to that when the Protestants left, they changed, but they kept in different aspects of it. Mm-hmm. And that is called communion, yes, where they eat unleavened bread and have a little cup of wine. And so my book proves that the early Jewish disciples never kept that as a ritual. It was a parable. And because otherwise, why are we having unleavened bread if it was the night before the Passover and they're eating regular bread? Absolutely. At that parable? Absolutely. And so that's the big thing, and it shows that when the Protestants came out of Catholicism and said, and rebelled, and a lot of them were killed at that time and also called heretics, just like the early 14thers were. The 14thers are what the Jewish people were called because they held to the 14th day, and in their idiom, that was an important thing. They wanted to keep that, and Rome didn't like that because Rome wanted it the way they were going, and so that's where that big division there was. But so basically, that I've never seen the communion ritual questioned, but the history is very clear that before the 9th century, even Rome kept their ritual with regular bread. Right. And it was only in the 9th century that they changed their thing to unleavened bread. And so that shows that the Protestants also, when they left, accidentally packed their bags and brought that ritual with them. Right. But it changed because the Catholic Church believes in transubstantiation, which is that the bread and the wine actually turn to Christ's flesh and blood. Okay. Now that would not go over in first century Jerusalem. Correct. They're not having a group getting together, drinking a little cup and thinking it's Christ's blood. You would be run out of town very quick, right, because that was within the Jewish idiom, there was a very strong thing of never ingesting blood from God's commands, from the time of Moses. Sure. And so anyway, so when Luther left the Catholic Church, he changed the ritual to consubstantiation instead of transubstantiation, which just means it's still kind of in the bread. And then Zwingli came along and said, no, it's neither of those. It's just a something that the Messiah wants us to do, and it's nothing changes. It's symbolic. Right. It's and more belief than an actual changing of the reality of the substance of what's there. Right. And it's all comes down to bread at the table, basically. I mean, it's breaking amazing, bread. Isn't it? Yeah. Yes. And so there's also something very symbolic in that, and very relatable as well. Right. And a long Jewish history of breaking bread, and what did that mean in their idiom? Yeah. But anyway, so when Zwingli came along and said, no, it's just a symbolic thing, Luther said he is of the devil, because every time you take another step further, those that stay back attack. Okay. And so, but most Protestants today would be called of the devil by Luther because they just see it as a symbolic. But my book takes it one step further and says, no, it's a parable, and it's not something that he wanted us to do as a ritual. Which is a very significant difference and does indeed set it apart, certainly from all the other books of its kind. Has anyone come up to you yet? Have you had an experience where someone has read the book and said to you, this impacted my life, this changed my view of things? Give me a specific example, if you will, of how this has affected the reader. Well, I've had a couple of reviews up on Amazon that have talked about, what different things. Basically, it's kind of a freedom from a ritualistic bondage of that you have to do this, and boy, if you don't do it just right, you're going to get it. And so there's a kind of a control factor that really has gone on in connection with the ritual. Sure. And I've even had pastors, 2 different pastors come to me and say, You know, I've always wondered about that. It never made sense. I thought, what are we doing this little, I mean, that's what they tell me is, what are we doing this, it seems so robotic, you know, why are we doing this? I've never really understood this. And so they've said, your book has really opened that up for me to see what this really meant.
Personal question for you. Any
Okay.
thoughts on your own of going into the clergy or becoming a member of the church in that capacity? And because the education seems almost similar between some of these guys who have taken as much as you have, or if not more, and dedicated their lives to it on a different level, because you've dedicated obviously quite a bit of time yourself, but you're giving explanation to the very people that are preaching the gospel to their followers. And it's almost like you have this, it's a divine intervention in and of itself, isn't it? I mean, it's like, you're here, I'm giving you an explanation for something that perhaps school didn't teach you, so it's quite revealing. Next steps for Alex?
I would say right now I'm just involved in marketing the book and trying to get the book out, trying to get people to consider it, and that hasn't been real easy yet, but I'm just, you know, going to keep doing what I can to get it out.
How are you doing that? You have a website?
I bought a bunch of books myself, and I've been sending them out to people for free.
Okay, yeah, let me give you my address before this is over.
You can have one.
Do you have a website, or is there a YouTube video out? And what's the website?
TheMessianicFeast.com.
Great, okay.
Yeah.
And writing another book, you think, or just promoting this one for now and thinking maybe downstream? Because you've won an award here, you've obviously got a recipe for success, so maybe it might be something to consider, no?
Yeah, there is one other subject that I'm looking at. But,
tell us real quick.
Well, I'm keeping that
okay, so we're not going to get to find out. Okay. Well, hey, congratulations.
Thank you so
Pleasure
much.
meeting you,
Thank
and all
you.
the best. What a wonderful accomplishment.
I appreciate
Good
that
to
very
meet
much.
you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it.